So, tell me, after all these years, what happened?
Yeah.
What made the album come out?
How did it come about? It, what happened was I got, I think it was either an email or something or a text from an Italian guy called Nino Gatti, who runs a band of fans in Italy called the Lunatics on the Grass. And he said, have you ever thought of, I think he was just writing a book at the time about Floyd, and he just said, have you ever thought about re-releasing it? I said, no, not really. No, it's never crossed my mind. There were other things I was working on at the time anyway. And anyway, he said, oh, well, if you do, I'd like to get involved and blah, blah, blah. So I said, well, I'll let you know. And funny enough, I think it was about a week or so, I got a call. First of all, I think it was from a friend of Rob's who asked me about doing it and would I call Rob, which I did. And it turned out we're like 20 minutes away from each other in Lincoln to Woodhall Spa, which was kind of strange. And he was very interested, and I liked what I got to say. And I was thought, okay, well, we go for it. It sounds like fun. And obviously, the album was only released on vinyl and I think cassette. There are a few dodgy CDs around, but I don't think any of them were kosher. So we got down to my friend and I in London, who I've written with for years, has his own studio. We got the master tapes digitized, which is the beginning of the whole thing, and from there, then we could get them into the computer, have a good listen to them, and there are a few little things without changing it drastically, because it wasn't a 24 track or anything like that. It was a stereo. You're working with a stereo tape, but with the novelties and plugins and everything that we have today, you can make amazing changes in the music, just subtle, to bring out the bottom end, things that it needed because of the instruments at the time, and now we have the capability to hear it in headphones and speakers, a lot stronger. So, we did quite a bit of mixing on all the tracks, and it was great. It's very subtle. It's got a lot more balls to it, if you like, than it had before. And so we were both pleased with the outcome of it. And Rob, showed it to Rob, and we were like, we're off. And I started doing the design for the CD jewel case and a kind of a booklet thing, which took quite a while. At this stage, I also had to, there came a stage where I was going to have to get in contact with Rick Wright's family, because obviously he's gone. And we've been having a couple of emails passing back and forth. So I went and met them in London. I think it was probably 2 summers ago. It could well be that. And first of all, it was great to see them again. They were tiny kids when we made the album, and so there was a lot to catch up with on. And they were, they seemed very eager that to do it, but they wanted to keep their eye on how it sounded and this and that and blah blah blah. So I said that's fine, and so I went ahead and we took it to mastering, changed it a few times as we went along, and we decided to add the original. There was a B-side. The single was Confusion, a track called Confusion. And the B-side was a track called Eyes Like a Gypsy. Eyes of a Gypsy. And it's a long time ago. And so we got those mastered up as well, because they're slightly different to the album version. And in between then and now, there was quite a lot of legal to and fro from Wright Music and Gonzo and myself and various lawyers, which slowed the process down. One phone call can knock you back 2 months because you call back, someone's going on holiday, someone's ill, and this, as you probably well know, through business.
Yeah, I'm sure it must be incredibly complicated. I hadn't heard the record for years, but I listened to bits of it again the other day. It really doesn't sound like it's nearly 40 years old.
I think it's incredible. I think it stands up really well. There's some instruments sounds that are ages. I think like the Fairlight, which at the time was Rick had, and he wanted to do something. The whole thing was he wanted to do something different from Floyd, and I wanted to do something from my band, the band called Fashion, and so it was. We went into that side of things, and obviously the technology changed so quickly, and the quality got better. Even just after we finished, samplers were coming out with amazing bandwidth and this sort of stuff. And but I love it. I mean, I'm really pleased with it. I must say that there's a couple of tracks that sound quite Floydy, which I love. Great bit of Hammond from Rick on the last track, and there are some different style of tracks, maybe a bit more dancey, which I think knocked a few people about, the Floyd fans. But the amazing thing is now we've redone it, and I've been teasing a few tracks out on Facebook and things over the last year or so. Is a lot of Floyd fans sort of said, "Oh, great! I bought it." We didn't really know how it went because there was no social media. You couldn't get in contact. How you can get in contact with someone now and find out exactly what's happening. And people from all around the world are saying, "Yes, I got I heard it, or I managed to get a copy of the cassette or something," and I love it. And I was really pleased. And as it's gone on. As I say, I went to Cambridge to see Nick on Wednesday, and the Italians came across, the Italian maniacs came across, and they're totally. I mean, they know all the tracks of Z, because Z was like pushed aside. It was just forgotten. And EMI, it was hard because I was still with Arista Records, and the Arista didn't want to let go. Rick wanted to do another album, and EMI, I think, didn't push it because they knew that I couldn't come over to EMI, and it was really frustrating at the time. But anyway, I'm glad you said that. It's nice to hear that after this long, it still stands up.
Yeah, it stands up very well. In fact, I have to admit, I was surprised at how well it stood, how contemporary it sounds.
Well, it's funny. A lot of people say, because I've been obviously know about the Floyd. I saw them, I think, first when I was about 15 or 16 at Shepton Mallet, but I've never been a major fan. I bought not the Wall, the Doctor. It's such a small selling record, Dark Side of the Moon. I bought that one, and
it was fairly obscure, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah, but someone said to me after we did Identity, and Rick went back with the Floyd guys. Is it the final cut, or I think it's that one? There's people saying there's a lot of little bits and pieces on there that sound like the album. That probably Rick brought with him.
He's not on Final Cut, but he is on the last two Floyd albums.
I'm not sure which. That's how much I know about Floyd.
Now I've got to think. He's on Momentary Lapse of Reason a bit.
Yes.
And he's on the Division Bell, all of it.
All of it.
And the bits of the Division Bell that do sound
Oh, you felt it as well.
It sounds like a gothic-y version of the Z album.
Really? I must have a listen. It sounds crazy that I haven't, but quite a few people have mentioned it, and so but that's great. It was a fabulous experience. The making of the album was. So I'll tell you how we met and the whole bits and pieces. It came about. I was in New York with Fashion, the band that I had at the time, and we were doing the New Music Seminar. It was the first music seminar in New York. People from all over the world, and it was really a really good show. We were playing a couple of gigs there at the time, and I met Ralph Ravenscroft, the sax player from Baker Street, and who sadly has passed as well. But and we were, just happened to get into a chat, and he said, I met Rick in Greece a few weeks ago, and he's talking about he wants to start a band, because he'd obviously been fired by Floyd at this stage, which I don't think bothered him at all, actually. He was the only one getting paid. So he said, and he wants to, and I knew, what's his name, Raf from London and various studio sessions and things. So he said, you'd be great for it. You should, when we get back, we'll have a meeting. So we got back to London, had a meeting, and with a few other guys I knew, bass player John McKenzie, fantastic. I think it was Tristan Fry, as far as I remember, drummer, and a couple of others, but my mind has gone a bit faded there. But anyway, so we had a couple of, we said, okay, well, let's just say this is it, the lineup, who's here at the dining table, and we had a few kind of rehearsal sessions just to see what would happen, and it was hard going because the majority of the guys were top session players, which is great. But sometimes it doesn't come down to being in a band where you throw out ideas, and it's hard working with a session player. They're great musicians, there's no questions about that. But anyway, we had a few rehearsals, and it was it was okay, but we weren't really getting anywhere. So I had to go back to the house in Cambridge with Rick. And we're in the studio, and I said, what about, we hadn't even, he wasn't even talking about recording at this time. I said, what about we do the album together, the two of us, and we'll worry about a band later on. I mean, we're going to be carrying a load of guys around for a year or whatever. And if, when we want to go to tour or whatever, then, we'll get them back. So he said, that's great. I think that's perfect. And he said, I've got a solo deal with Harvest, and we'll go 50-50 on it. So I thought, sounds good to me. And it was, so he said, why don't you move to Sue, my wife? We were living in London at the time. He said, why don't you move down here? You and Sue move down here. And because he's had a, kind of nice studio, good enough for demoing an album anyway. And we moved, that's okay, if it's cool with you, then, safe driving back and forth, blah, blah. So we moved in for probably a good year and a half in the end. And kind of settled down and started making the album, the demos there. And it was a great time. It's a great experience. I think Rick was having a few worries with probably tax with the band. I think that was going on, and he was going through a divorce and everything. So it was the same, same sort of family troubles or band troubles that you have, but on a bigger scale. And so we started recording, and we went down to his place he had a villa, or a house, I should say, in Grasse, in south of France. So we went down there for a few weeks to do the lyrics, etc. And absolutely beautiful place. But fabulous. And came back, and then basically went into it must have been after about a year or so, we got to the point where we were ready to record properly. And I'd just been working with a guy called Tim Palmer, who was a young kid, and he was very, up to the minute with the FSL, the solid state logic desks and all this sort of stuff that were coming around. And I thought it'd be great to oh, bless you. You just blown the bucket off your head. So I invited him. Well, I was, with Rick's. After speaking to Rick, Tim Palmer joined us as co-producer on it, and engineer. He's a top flight engineer and has gone on to be as well. We've done a lot of great work in the States, and so I think we did a couple of weeks probably recording all the tracks, and basically, I don't know whether this will be interesting to you, but everything had to run off a code, SMTP, but that's the usual code that runs the machines together and everything. But at the time, there was no MIDI, so we had to run. The master machine was the Fairlight, and we ran it by just putting a tone out from another, like a 440 or something like that. As it happened, as you turned the tone up or down, the speed went faster or slower on the Fairlight.
Good
So, it was incredible. So it was a total invention that we just made up there. Yeah, the problem was, if anything got any of the tone had got erased, the whole thing would have dropped, dropped out halfway to the song. But it didn't. It worked really well, and it started, right on the. So then from the Fairlight, we could run, well, we played, I think, most of the other instruments freehand. So it's just basically the Fairlight doing the sequences, and this bass sequencer. Rick brought in a mini Moog from the from the warehouse or wherever, which was great, very nice one. And we just I don't know, 2 weeks, and we got everything down on tape, and I think another maybe week or two we mixed it, and it was great. It was quite an experiment, and that was the recording of.
It's interesting to hear how something, because like I said, it still sounds very contemporary, but how something so contemporary was recorded in such a comparatively primitive sort of way.
Well, it was. I mean, I think there's another way of syncing synthesizers, which was called CV-ing gate. It's an electric pulse, and so you could get a couple of synthesizers to run together, but we had to keep running the Fairlight again and again, because although it was a fantastic machine at the time, you could only have 8 tracks, if you like.
I didn't know that.
Yes, well, as we got it, as we got the Fairlight and learned it, they were improving it as well. And one of the guys from Psycho, which was the company in London that was the dealer for it at the time, came down. He said, "Would you try this disc?" And it was called Page R, and it was just one of those 1/4-inch floppy disks, and you put it in, and up came like an 8 bars of music, if you like. That's how they'd set it, one above the other. So you could put a sample on each track, and then you could play each track. So you could play a kick drum, or kick drum is there on the first or something like that. All samples, and then on the rest you could do a bass sequencer and everything, and you could edit it like cut and paste. So it was very basic, but it was also the first sort of visual sequencer that you could without, you just usually had to type everything in from the keyboard, which was an absolute nightmare off something like one of those BBC computers that we had at the time and everything, which I know, it was great. It was a great time, I think. But, yeah, we took a lot of chances on it, and Rick loved it because, he said he'd never done that sort of stuff before. And, I started learning when we did our album, which was in 81, 82. We went to Cologne because our producer was German. And obviously with Kraftwerk and bands like that, they were miles ahead. Men in white coats walking around the studio. We want to kind of get back to run that. Yeah, no problem. We can fix this. But it was very much undercover, so we didn't know how it worked. But it was a great time.
I read about Fairlights at
yes.
the time, but they were so appallingly expensive.
Ridiculous.
As I ever did my things in the time, could even possibly think about affording one.
No, well, me neither. And walking into Rick's studio, and I looked down and I'm like, that's a Fairlight, isn't it? And he said, yeah, I can't. It's got dust all over it. I can't. I don't understand it. And so I thought, right. Right. And I said, give me the book. It's a bloody book about half an inch thick. And I was like, oh my God. And literally you had to, at this stage, you had to type things in, to type the information into it. And I thought, oh, this is a bit of a ball ache. It's going to be, and within a week or so, this guy came out, because I think Rick called him up and said, is there anything going on with the Fairlight? And this guy came out with this page R sequencer, and it just changed everything for me, especially because that was my bag, sort of, the electronics and the more control you could get out of them. So it was great. It was great, but that's the one instrument I think that does that dates the album. But it's okay. I can live with it. And I think some of the younger kids can as well, because there's some fans who obviously weren't born when the album was made, but have heard it and are interested are buying it, and so that's good news.
Well, I saw the photograph of the people you were with.
In Cambridge.
Cambridge.
Yes.
So at least half of them look incredibly young.
Oh yeah, I was surprised because I was thought exactly the same when we got into the gig, the Nick Mason gig as well. There were a lot of people with their kids, and the kids have got all the Floyd stuff on and everything as well. So yes, they were definitely or either not born or quite young at that time. So it's fabulous. I think it's a great thing that. And the same, I know this is a different story altogether. I'm doing the same thing with fashion. I don't know whether you ever heard any of the fashion stuff at all.
Of course I do.
Oh, no, okay, fabulous. But we're doing the same thing. I've already digitized everything, and we're doing a 3 CD album, it blows me away.
So what else are you doing at the moment then?
Well, at the moment there is something else actually, because a year ago and a bit, so there's obviously the Z album is coming out, is virtually out, and that's on its way. I don't think there'll be any gigging involved with that. There's a few, we'll see. And maybe I'll do another one if Rick's kids will let me use the name. All that sort of stuff. Then there's the fashion Fabrique. It's called Fabrique Deluxe now, and it's going to be a 3 CD album. But in the meantime, I met Zeus, who is the German producer, Zeus V. Held.
Mm-hmm.
And a good writer and producer in his own right. Fantastic character. And we decided it would be nice to get together and do not fashion 2 or 3 or 4, whatever it's going to be. But we're going to call it Fabric Global. That's the name of the band or the product, if you like. And we're about to start. We're going out to Germany in about a couple of weeks to do our first session out there and start putting stuff together, which I've really got a good feeling about. Feel very excited because it'll be right up to the minute and very electronic, but very acoustic as well. And I think that was a nice thing about. I think it worked maybe better in Z. I don't know, because you have to play real time. You have to play acoustic instruments and real instruments against the electronic sequences. Otherwise, it is like Kraftwerk, which I love very much, but it needs to swing, especially if you're doing. I like black music personally, and R&B and blues and all that sort of stuff. So you have to be able to swing the music around the constant, the constant sequencing, which can be swung themselves now. Now the software has got, so good. So, but you can still tell sometimes. It's obviously a sequence and blah, 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 so you have to be careful of that. But, so this new one is, I bought a couple of really nice jazz guitars and I think it's going to be sexy. I like it to be sexy.
This sounds
I think Fabric was sexy.